everyone, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I'm building the Orange Bullet model rocket from Estes. And as the package indicates here, this is one of Estes' first designs, and my understanding is that they never actually put it into production until now. Okay, so we'll pull out our instruction sheet here, and this will have our parts list on it. Alright, so we've got fin stock, okay, and then in a small parts package here we've got the fin bases and little fin tabs that go down here at the bottom. Alright, our body tube, which looks a little bit squished. Let's go ahead and open this up. Yeah, I got a little squished in transit there. At least one end's still good, so we'll just put the nose in the squished end and it'll come back up to round. Launch lug. Okay, we've got some water slide decals here. Don't forget that. And it's actually a balsa nose cone. You don't see those too much anymore. Alright, I'm going to clear this away and we will get started. The first thing we're going to do is sand the fins. And hopefully your fins are still intact within the sheets like this. If they've popped out, then you just need to do them individually. So for the main fins here, I'm going to use initially some 100 grit sandpaper and just sand with the grain here, the whole sheet. And then I'm going to switch to 150 grit sandpaper for a finer finish. And then on the fin supports here, I'm going to use just the 150 because this is a little bit thin and I don't want to break it off. Just means I have to press a little harder here. And you can just go directly to 150 on the main fins too if you like. Okay, just sand them smooth, and then we need to cut everything out using a hobby knife here, and that will include the little fin tabs there. Now the next step is to attach the little fin tabs here onto the fins. Okay, and there's just a little bit where they cut the corner there. That needs to go against the inside edge there. Now, they don't show us doing any kind of rounding or other streamlining here. And so that part's up to you. And also, if you are considering any type of wood treatment here, like a sanding sealer or a wood sealer, you'll probably want to do that before you go to the step of putting on the little fin tabs here. So I'm going to go ahead and just sand these to remove the little nubs on them. But otherwise, I'm going to keep the edges straight and unrounded. Alright, and even on these little guys here, they've got little paper nubs. You can go ahead and lightly sand those as well. Just don't change the shape. And don't do it too much. These actually provide additional weight to the fins, and that's what makes the rocket tumble after the motor is expelled. And then also with the fin supports, do the same thing. So go ahead and just sand these to remove the nubs. But be careful, they are kind of fragile. Now when we do the fin tabs, it's a good idea to have a little clamp like this. You don't have to, you can just hold it together with your fingers, but this will make your fingers a little less tired. So we need to find, for each fin, 2 fin tabs, and make sure that that little corner there is facing the inside slope of the fin. Alright, then we need one for the other side. That'll go like that. Alright, and here go ahead and use white glue or wood glue. Or in my case, white wood glue. Now the key here is just to get a thin, uniform amount of glue on here. We don't want this to be sloppy. Okay, so just take a finger and smear that around. And then go ahead and put that back on. And here you can actually use a flat surface to align it. So everything should be flush with this edge, and then this corner. And it'll do the same thing for this one. Remember, make sure you keep it oriented properly there. And then once you've got everything lined up, you can either hold it for about 60 seconds or you can put a clamp on it like this and let that dry. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other 2 fins, but I'll do it off camera and then come back. The next thing to do is to bevel the leading edge of the fin supports here. Alright, so they're showing us a diagram here in side view. So here's the little laser line here. That's going to go toward the aft. And so our forward area here, and this is not quite to scale, okay, but we're going to take this forward area here and bevel it downward. Okay, so you can start with some 100 grit sandpaper here. And just start sanding it down. And check it occasionally and make sure that you're sanding it straight and not going too far one side or the other. Okay, and just as you're getting down to the very edge, go ahead and switch to a finer sandpaper. I'm using 150 here. Okay, and go ahead and bring that right down to the edge. Okay, so about like that. And then I'm going to do that to the other two off camera and then come back. Here I have all of the fin supports sanded. I'm just going to set those aside for now as well. Next we need to cut out this tube marking guide. I just need to make sure that there's nothing behind it. If you don't want to cut up your instructions, just go ahead and make a photocopy of this and cut that out. Alright, now we're going to need our body tube. And I'm going to take the nose cone at this point. As I said, I've got a little bit of a squash at one end here. So I'm going to put my nose cone in just to keep it round. But we'll be marking down here. And we'll need a piece of masking tape, possibly two. Okay, so the first thing to do is just wrap this around, and you can actually wrap it around the middle of it, because we are going to draw lines on the entire length. Okay, so line up the two tick marks there, and then go ahead and put a piece of masking tape in place. Okay, now I've covered up some of the lines there, but I can still see where they go. And then I'm going to use a smaller piece of tape just to hold this in place so that it doesn't turn on me while we're doing the rest of it. Alright, now take a pencil and we're just going to mark where each of those fin lines is going to be. Okay, so you need to mark both sides of this, because this is actually marking where the fin supports will go. Okay. Now I want to check something quick here. Yes, so the launch lug is going to go along the base of one of the fins, so there is no launch lug line on here. And now we can just carefully remove our masking tape and the fin guide. And then you can take the body tube to a door frame like they show here. You can use a drawer edge, or you can use a tube marking guide like this one that Estes makes. I found this is really handy, especially doing videos, but even when I'm not, sometimes it's just easier to use this than to try and find a door frame. So here I'm just going to line up my little tick marks there, and we'll draw a line all the way down for each set. Now we're going to attach the fin supports, and these are going to go on flush to the aft end, and they actually do extend up. Oops, make sure you get them right side up. They actually do extend up to the nose there. Now, in the instructions, they show putting the nose on after you've put on the fin supports. Okay, now I'm trying to decide if there's a good reason not to put the nose on first. And I don't see a really good reason. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put the nose on first and then put on the fin supports. And maybe if we find a reason not to, I'll tell you about that later in the video. What I will do though ahead of time is go ahead and sand that nose cone a bit. So I'm going to use 220 grit sandpapers. I really don't want to change the shape of the nose, I just want to smooth it out. And again, you might want to use some sanding sealer on this, in which case you want to do that before putting it onto the rocket. For this model and for this video, I'm just going to do it as the instructions show, so they're not showing any type of wood treatment there. Okay. Now later on I will use a filler that tends to fill in a lot of the wood grain here. So it's a combination filler and primer. And so that'll take care of some of the wood grain there. And as I said, if you don't like the wood grain, go ahead and use a sanding sealer before you put this back together. Now I'm going to come back here and I'm going to put the nose on. Alright, so use some white or wood glue and just put a nice even bead here. That wasn't very even. Use my finger and smooth that out a bit. You don't want this dripping way down into the tube because it may interfere with the motor. Basically your nose cone is also your engine block. So I'm going to put that in. Make sure it's snug there. Okay, and now I'm going to start putting on those supports here. So now that we have the nose cone on, we can go ahead and just glue the entire support at once. Okay, so they're putting the glue onto the body tube, mainly so that they don't glue the top part. I'm just going to put it on the whole thing here. And once again, you don't want this drippy. We want a nice even film. So if you get little lumps and drops like that, just go ahead and spread that all the way along. Okay, and we're going to put this on. Again, we want this flush with the aft end of the rocket, and then in between the lines all the way up. And something else you may find useful is if you've got a dead engine here, is go ahead and put that in. That gives you something to push against so that you get a really good bond all the way through this. And with that thin layer of glue, it actually sets really quickly, so you don't have to worry about this falling off right away. And we'll just keep doing this with the rest of the fin supports. Now I'm just going to let that dry for a few minutes before we go on with the fins. My fin supports have dried enough that we can go on to the next step here. So we'll put the fins on, and one of the things I want to do here is give them one last little bit of sanding. Make sure we got those nubs off, and also to even up any place where the fin tabs might be off just a little bit. So this way we'll level everything together. Alright, this is our root edge, and that's going to go right over the laser etched line here. And so the angle here should be flush with the edge of the fin support. Okay, so once again, white glue or wood glue. And again, you don't want this really wet. We just want a thin film of glue on here. And I'm going to touch this where we want it, and then bring it back off. And I'm going to let this dry for about 30 seconds to allow it to get tacky. Alright, the glue has become a little bit tacky here, and now we'll go ahead and put this back on. Alright, and just press and hold it there for a few seconds. And then that should stick nicely. Now check your spacing. I'm actually a little bit off here, so I'm going to break that quickly and come back on. It's still a little bit off. Alright. Now you can use a fin alignment guide here if you like, but you need to make sure that it's got room to accommodate this. So for example, this is a 3D printed one, and it's got these little half circles here that are meant for fillets, or in this case for fin supports. Alright, and I can slide that on. Now the fin's a little bit wider than the slot is here, so I'm just going to put that right against the tip, and that'll still hold it in place and allow me to keep alignment all the way around. Okay, I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes, and then we'll continue the process all the way around, but I'll do that off camera. Here I have all of my fins attached, although the glue is still wet. And I have found one reason why you might not want to put the nose on first, and that is you can't put the rocket up like this to let it dry. Otherwise, I don't see any other major drawbacks, so I just have to improvise a way of holding this upside down and upright. So I'm going to let the fins completely dry here, and then we'll come back and put on the launch lug and the fillets. My fins are dry enough that we can put the launch lug on, and it's going to go adjacent to one of the fins and on the fin support. So what I'm doing here is looking for one where I've got the fin maybe a little off center, and it's got a little more space on it, so maybe right here. So here I'm just going to go ahead and put a bead of glue on the launch lug. Again, we don't want this to be runny, just a thin layer. And then that is going to go right up against the fin and that support, and we're going to make that flush with the aft end of the rocket body tube there. And then once again, we are going to allow this to dry. The launch lug now is dry enough that we can handle it once more. And our last structural thing to do is to add the fillets. So once again, using wood or white glue, we're just going to fill in along the edges. And these should go not only on the fins, but on the fin supports. So just run a bead of glue here, and then another one along the fin. You want to have some tissues or rags or paper towels handy here. Alright, and then just smooth those in with your finger. And then just proceed all the way around the rocket. So we've got fillets all the way around. Go ahead and let this dry in a horizontal position so that the fillets don't run to one end to the other. After they're dry, if you want to build them up, you can add additional layers of glue, or if you've got air bubbles or gaps that you want to fill in. But it's best to do it in layers rather than trying to get one big glob of glue to dry regularly. Alright, so for the purposes of building this rocket is done. I am not going to do painting and decals in this video, but the paint scheme is pretty easy to do. Just paint the whole rocket orange, and then if you want, paint the fin tabs black, and then we just have a couple of water slide decals. So with that, I hope you had fun building this rocket. Have a great launch and a safe recovery. And please stay tuned for more of my videos.